knows where the other candidate is.
Um, Nelly and the audience, I did contact Roquevela about 3 weeks ago, explaining that we are going to have a debate. After some discussion, that he did say that he was committed to come in. So as far as I know, he's supposed to be here. Since then, that was only a confirmation of the date, and he said he will be here. Since then, we actually forwarded the questions that we forwarded to you also, madam. We did send you some questions. Same questions were also given to him. But he's not here, it's 35 minutes late, so we are going to start. That's it.
Okay, so we're going to begin with Nelly Vielma introducing herself to you all and her party platform and what she stands for. Nelly?
Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, and thank you for coming here to hear this platform. My name is Nelly Vielma, and I'm running for City Council because I want to have change in the city. After going to the City Council meetings for about 3 years, I was very concerned that there wasn't much progress, that there isn't much collaboration. So that is what I want to bring to the table with my experience as a public servant. I started back in 1992. I worked with the city of Laredo, writing grants for economic development projects such as the TAMU infrastructure, such as Economic Development Department. And after that, I went to work with MHMR. I worked there for 5 years. I earned a master's in counseling psychology, and I did work with mental health issues and substance abuse treatment as well. After that, my husband calls me the eternal student. I studied also for teaching, and I earned a teaching certificate K-12, and I was a teacher for 3 years with UISD elementary schools. After that, we decided to go to San Antonio because I was accepted for law school, so we all moved to San Antonio. We had 3 children at the time, and I started law school at St. Mary's University, graduated there in 2001, and I came back to Laredo as a prosecutor with the DA's office. I started there within 3 months of doing misdemeanors. I was promoted to a chief prosecutor for domestic violence unit, where I supervised several attorneys and investigators. And I did that for approximately going on 4 years with the DA's office. And since 2006 till now, we've had our own business, the Vielma Law Firm. And so that's what I want to bring also to the city, the business sense in how we spend the taxes. Because as a business owner, those of you that have a business, you know that you have to make decisions on a day-to-day basis as to how to improve or where you have to cut or where you have to invest. And so that's what I want to do as well with the city, because there's many times decisions that are not with business sense in mind or with the best intentions as to the quality of the tax dollars being spent or earned or invested for the city. My platform stands for the first thing, accountability. I think that is very much lacking right now with the city. Accountability and transparency, honesty in government, and that is what I stand for, to be a reform candidate to change things the way that they're going in the city right now. Secondly, as a business owner, we went through that. My husband and I, for 10 months, we had to go through several obstacles just to get a building permit from the city. So we want to be more inviting to businesses to be able to open up in Laredo, so that we can invite more retail enterprise and manufacturing, perhaps to increase the employment that we have, the opportunities in the city as well. So being more inviting to business will also equal opening up more employment. That's another one of our platform issues, that we're able to open up employment, to develop more the set of skills that our students have, because we graduate about 6,000 kids per year from our high schools, yet there's not enough employment for them. So we want to be able to build that set of skills where we can bring in other industries to Laredo, and we will have the definite, student body that is going to be trained to be able to take on those jobs and be able to stay here, retain also our local talent, and develop the workforce. The other thing that I think is very important for me is collaboration, because I've worked also with the city, and as a former prosecutor, I can collaborate to bring about the public service and public safety issues as well.
Okay, before we get started on the questions that we have for Ms. Vielma, I want to remind the audience that if you have a question, you can ask Diana. Diana, would you raise your hand? She's got pieces of paper where you can write the question and submit it, and we'll ask Mrs. Vielma the question that you want to answer. Thank you. Mrs. Vielma, Our Laredo believes that the company First Recycling owes monies to the city, and thus the citizens per their contractual agreements. Our Laredo believe that they can prove this. If you are on the council, how will you make sure that monies owed to the city are collected appropriately, and what steps would you take?
I've read the 3 contracts that the First Recycling has with the city, and I was very concerned to see that there's different percentages that they were supposed to be paying to the city. And if it wasn't for the efforts of Our Laredo, your group has been excellent in being these watchdogs for our tax dollars, we wouldn't even have known that they had not been reporting properly, that they were not providing an accounting to the city, and that we are not getting paid that percentage that by contract they should have been paying. So it is important that those contracts have enforceable language. From what I heard at the last meeting, the way that they were drafted, it was not able to be enforceable. So we have to be a little bit more conscientious of how our tax dollars are being spent in that regard, to make sure that the contracts are good, and that we enforce also the quarterly report so that they can provide the financial reporting to the city and pay the taxpayers, the money that is due. I think that if a company is not applying the contract, records the way that they're supposed to report to the city, they are breaching their contract, and that should be a clause that for termination if the contracts are enforceable. It has to be a two-way street, whatever they were supposed to do for us and whatever the city was supposed to do for them. And in this instance, from what I saw, they were not reporting, they were not paying the city, and it wasn't until that accounting came about that now there's some question of numbers and issues that haven't been paid. It was also, questionable that after that audit, they come back saying, well, you owe us all these credits. Well, how come they did not report that before? So I think that it's something that we have to pay attention to. Also, I was concerned that they upped the years of the contract to 15 years. And I think that the contract shouldn't be that long because it doesn't make that person strive for something where it's going to be competitive. I think that the contract should be shorter, and we should be able to have enforceable clauses to terminate the contract if it's not following what they promised to the city as far as paying back to the taxpayers.
Thank you, Mrs. Vielma.
Mrs. Vielma, in recent local elections, there has been a lot of talk about honesty and integrity by candidates, in part because Laredoans are tired of machine politics. Therefore, given that Laredo is calling for significant change and calling for honesty and integrity in our city, can you speak to your capability of standing up for what is right for the city and what exemplifies real honesty and real integrity, even if it means you are standing alone or in a minority on the council? Are you able to do what is right ethically, no matter the consequences?
Yes, and I've done that throughout my whole career in my life. I strive to do that because it is important that what you commit to, that you're true to yourself. You cannot have a parallel life, and not do the same thing in your daily life and your professional life. And so I think that I'm the candidate for reform, and that's the main thing about my platform: accountability, transparency, and honesty in government. It is very important for the people to know that when they choose somebody, first of all, I'm not part of the establishment. I've never been into politics. But I just decided to run because I got frustrated after going to city council for 3 years that nothing was happening. So I want change. I want the same that a lot of people want, because many people are frustrated. They don't even want to vote. There's apathy because they don't see that anything's going to change. I am running for that reason because I want to bring about change, and because I'm fed up with the government the way that it is right now. I don't see the honesty. I don't see the accountability. And I have already shown that through my practice. I've worked with the humanitarian relief. I've worked with victims of crime, putting together picnics and different, ideas to help out in the community. And so I've already done that, and I'm not going to change. I want to work for what is best for the city, and that is my commitment as the candidate, that I'm going to work for reform, that I'm going to work to, clear out the wrongs that have been done. And that's why I want their support, so that they can see that we can do it if we unite and we have the vote, that we can change the city if we have this reform. And the accountability, I think, is the first step. If we're able to be transparent in government, people are going to see through that. And actions speak louder than words. And so that's what I'm going to continue to do, what I've been doing throughout my career.
Thank you, Mrs. Vielma.
Back to the topic of contracts. A contract was given to Altus. To make things worse, they were not the lowest bidder for this project. After vetoes and re-voting on the issue, Tomas Rodriguez, who used to work for the city, ended up being the main supervisor for this project in less than 1 year after his retirement. Do you believe the contract was given appropriately? Was it ethical or moral to award the contract headed by Tomas Rodriguez? How would you have approached this issue?
Well, I think that there's a process for a reason because we want integrity in that process. And so the ethics code, I think it's 3.02, it calls for disqualification of anybody that has been involved with the city, has been an employee of the city for at least 1 year before, in this instance, in that contract. So Mr. Rodriguez had not been out of the city for 1 year when he was hired for this contract. And so what happens is that he has internal information. There could be a possible conflict of interest. He could have, been involved with the request from the get-go, from the planning of that project. And so that calls itself for, possible inappropriate decisions, and you don't want the appearance of impropriety in any of these contracts. As far as the ethics code that we have for the city, that calls for automatic disqualification of contract, and yet it was not done. And I understand also that ex-councilman Vera was also involved in that contract, so if the citizens had already recalled them, there's 2 issues there of a conflict of interest in that contract.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Vielma, with changes in the charter, do you believe that we will return to the patron system of the pre-Tatangelo era? And how do you define a patron system?
Well, the patron system is when one or a few people are the ones that are calling the shots, but they're not following necessarily a procedure or the law. And I think that that is already happening right now because we have leadership in the city council that is not necessarily, not following what is supposed to be done. And so what ends up happening is that they have improper influence over employees or over contracts and decision making. And so this is the equivalent to the patron system, what we are going through right now. That if we have a majority, and that majority is always going to be overvoting everybody else's decisions, then that is the patron system in its place currently. And so, I'm sorry, the other part of the question was as far as the patron system?
How do you define a patron system?
Okay, yes, it's just when you have to answer to the boss instead of answering to what the process or procedure is, and that is what is happening right now. And as far as the city charter changes or recommendations, we are not going back to the patron system because what they're calling for is changes in the procedures or making it a little bit more clear to get information or for the mayor to be able to put items on the agenda or to veto, which right now it's kind of like a moot veto. So I don't think that that the changes in the charter will go to the patron system, and I think right now we're experiencing vestiges of the patron system in place.
Thank you, Mrs. Vielma.
Recently, the city council members and the mayor were given substantial raises. Granted, only newly elected members will benefit from this move. What is your opinion on this issue?
Well, I think that was the last item moved by ex-councilman Esteban Rangel. And I think that the city councilman position is to run to serve the public. It's not a full-time position, and so the salary should be commensurate with the time that you spend representing the city. I don't think that was a good decision because it's going to be, taken away from the taxpayers' dollars. And what I would recommend is to have a study to look at other cities similar to Laredo and to get input from the citizens to see what would be the adequate salary that the city councilman and the mayor should have. And that's how I would have approached that.
Thank you.
What is your opinion concerning the 3-candidate disqualification, and what would you have done as a council member?
Well, what I did is that I called the Texas Rangers for an investigation because I think that there was something going on, trying to put this under the rug. I'm glad that they were able to enter an agreement in civil court, but still, I think that there's a lot of questions unanswered, and the Texas Rangers, I hope, will conduct an investigation to see who did what, who was perhaps improperly influenced or coerced into breaking the law or procedures, and how is it that other candidates were tipped off to apply. So there's a lot of questions up in the air, and I think that the citizens deserve answers. I think that the government was quick to shut that door, but we are still with unanswered questions, and so that's why I called on the Texas Rangers to investigate that mishap.
Thank you.
At the present, each council member gets $500,000 a year in discretionary funds, a total of $2 million per term. Do you think dispersing taxpayer money in such ways keeps major citywide projects from being carried out? Do you support this current setup on the discretionary funds?
I don't. I think that it's a recipe for a lot of problems, and part of my platform is if it's going to stay in place, that it will be transparent, that it will be available online so that all the citizens will know what their monies are being spent on. What I saw through going to city council meetings was that they're pretty much taking it as their own petty cash account. And many of them refer to it as my discretionary funds. And no, it is your discretionary funds. It is your tax dollars. And so we should be serving you with the priorities that the city can designate to see what are going to be the best projects for that district and for the city as a whole.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vielma, Councilman Roque Vela referred to you as an inferior candidate. Would you care to respond to his comment?
I'd like to ask him that, where does he get inferior from? As far as education, as you've heard, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology. I have a teaching certificate, and I have a JD. And I graduated with honors from St. Mary's, having 3 children. So I don't know what of those qualifications will make me inferior. As far as my experience in work, I have worked with the city, with the county, with the school district, as a former prosecutor, in many areas helping out the community. So I don't think that he has that experience managing the jet boat, does not compare to everything that I've done with the city.
Thank you.
Recently, against the wishes of the bond council, city staff, and others, a co-bond council was added to the bond council and was paid 20%. Do you believe this was appropriate? Was taxpayer monies well spent on this issue?
No, I don't think that they should have paid for the co-counsel. It wasn't necessary. I did some research, and the Estrada and Hinojosa, they're experts in financial advisory services. They manage about 105 billion nationwide. So they know what they're doing. They're experts in that field, and they didn't need any co-counsel. And as a matter of fact, they told the city, we don't need it. But my opponent decided to give this contract to Mr. Cruz, who is a very fine attorney, but in this case, he was not needed for this project, for this contract, and I would have saved the tax dollars for the taxpayers.
Thank you.
And this is another question from the audience. As a fairly new resident in District 5, why should I cast my vote for you?
Well, because I think if you want change, if you are tired of what government is doing for our district right now, then you will vote for me. If you listen to my experience, my education, I know that I can offer more and I can do more changes for the city than my opponent. And if you're just new to the district, you can ask around and you can see what has been done, and there's many people that are very dissatisfied with the current representation. We've been block walking and we've been hearing from Lakeside, the homeowners are dissatisfied. From Alexander, they're dissatisfied as well. There were many complaints of trying to talk to their councilman and he wouldn't return the calls, and that they started a housing project right behind them, which they were opposing. In Lakeside also, as far as the safety, where they found 2 bodies and nothing was done. There's no preventive security measures there as well. There were some issues also with traffic. In Alta Vista, they're complaining also because there's the city has a lot of dirt nearby, and it affects a lot of the residents in that area. There was a person that said, I have flooding issues right there in Alta Vista, in Cypress, I believe. And her house floods. She calls the Councilman Vela and he says, oh, well, that's just a Band-Aid. I have bigger emergencies with the city than this. And so there's a lot of people that are not happy with the representation. I cannot promise that I'm going to be able to fix everything because it takes a process. But what I promise is what I've been doing all my life, to be able to represent you as I have done as an attorney, and to be able to listen, because I'm a good listener. I'm a counseling psychologist, you know I'm going to listen and pay attention to the problem and try to come back with the best solution possible for the residents.
Thank you. Mrs. Vielma, do you live in the district? How long? Do you have children? Do they attend public schools or private? Which schools are they attending?
Yes, we've been in the district since 2005, and we have 5 children. Our oldest, Felipe, just graduated from St. Mary's University School of Law. And I'm sorry, from Ave Maria, I'm changing him to mine. From Ave Maria School of Law. Stephen just graduated from TAMU, and Priscilla is currently at New Harvest Christian Academy. Our 8-year-old is in Harmony, John Paul, and our 4-year-old is in Mary Help of Christian Schools.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vielma, what is your record of public service outside of your official position? How have you helped the community in an unofficial capacity?
Well, I've worked, like I mentioned before, with the city, writing grants, as a teacher, as a prosecutor, as a psychologist, and helping the community. Even after I left the prosecutor's office, for the last 10 years, we've been helping the community, especially with victims of crime. We've been able to help out many years pro bono with assistance down the line with the Mexican consulate as well, to provide avenues for victims of crime to have representation. I've also started for the last 3 years, we've had a picnic for victims of crimes and at-risk youth, and we have helped with the community as well, providing free legal advice in exchange for supplies for schools, also free legal advice like at Thanksgiving sometimes for turkeys and things like that. So we've done a lot of work for the community, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you. Mrs. Vielma, public service has been termed the highest calling for a career by philosophers across the centuries, Socrates and Plato, Cicero, Jefferson, and many others. To be a public servant, a person should possess and demonstrate certain absolute values or qualities, namely wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Please elaborate how you exhibit those attributes for office.
I have a quote in my office from Aristotle. What is the essence of life? To serve others and to do good. And that's what I try to do every day. And my experience has been to follow the law, as a prosecutor, to seek justice, and I continue to represent people, seeking justice for them every day in my representation. And I've also worked very hard with the church. I've been a pioneer with ACTS, bringing down retreats that are going to help our community, that are going to help our youth. I've been involved doing community service. And so those, I pray that I will emulate all those values and attributes, and that's what I hope to continue to do, to work hard, to be the best person, to bring about justice, truth, and the freedom of expression that everybody should have, to follow, what we want as individuals, and to be able to serve. I think having been a public servant for many years, I want to continue serving the community, and that's why I'm running, because I care about my community. And that is the reason why I chose to run as candidacy.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vielma, in the charter amendments, which ones you support and which ones you don't, and why? Considering the current city council members did not support public comments to be included in the city charter, would you support public comments on all city meetings?
Yes, I think that's a very important part of the democracy process. I was frustrated those years that I've been going to city council that for me, when I will be in front of them, it will beep right away. But yet when they came to talk against whatever procedure I had, that they will have all the time in the world, the staff and everybody else in the city council, and you were just shut to 3 minutes. So I think it's important to develop the issue to be able to talk with a few more minutes, or be able to interject or respond to whatever else they brought, to have a time for rebuttal maybe. So I will support that. And the other part, I'm sorry, the charter amendments. I know that there's a long list. I went through some of them. I do support the veto, because what I've seen is that the veto right now is smooth. If you have the majority, like we've seen the group of 5, that they always vote together, And if the veto calls for 5 votes, then the same people that passed something that night are the same people that squashed that veto that night, as we have seen the recent history with the mayor's veto. So if it's moved, then we need that one more vote to make it, something with teeth. As far as other amendments, I do not support my opponent's request for the proposition that it will take 10% instead of 5% of the voters for a recall, which is what we saw with Councilman Vera. It was just 5%. And so it's hard enough to get the people out to vote. And then if we make it twice as hard to raise it to 10%, if you're not happy with the representation, it's going to be very difficult. Let's say, for example, this year, it's a presidential vote, so more people are going to go out to vote. If you're not happy with who you selected, it's going to be nearly impossible to get the 10% of people to try to recall somebody that is not serving you as a public servant.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vielma, groups like Our Laredo believe the city government is not being transparent. Is it transparent? What will you do to change those perceptions? What is your opinion on groups like Our Laredo?
I am very thankful to Our Laredo because you have been watchdogs for our community. I have learned a lot just getting through your webpage and attending some of the hearings in City Council, seeing how you do the public records request and you have your data and you get informs us as constituents, and this is part of democracy. A lot of people, like I mentioned before, they're apathetic, they don't care, they think that it's never going to change, but people like your group are making this, recent, making people getting more involved with the social media and knowing what's actually happening downtown, what's happening at City Hall. And so I applaud your efforts because it helps us also as a community to get more involved. And, I think that we need more groups like yours to be watchdogs for our tax dollars as well.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vielma, what makes you a better candidate than Mr. Vela? And is there anything else you want to add?
Well, as I mentioned before, my experience and my service to the community, my education, I think is what makes a big difference. I've worked already for the city. I wrote already the grants in the past for economic development. I want to continue doing that. I will be able to supervise. I've supervised federal grants as well. I know that the collaboration is lacking right now. We cannot get a consensus from a group of people that are always, looking for their ego to win. If we're not able to get that consensus, things are not going to pass. Proposals are not going to be, seen to fruition. And so that's another thing that I know I can do because I've worked already with the city, with the county, and I know the players, and I can bring people together and collaborate. I also know that with my experience in education, I can bring about different projects for the city that are going to improve in different sectors, and the projects that we have are important for the city's growth. I know that people have seen me already working for the community, and I had been asked, years prior, why haven't you run for office? And I was not interested at the time, but after seeing that the politics at City Hall have not progressed at all, I decided to run this candidacy because I want change. I am frustrated, like a lot of people are, that there hasn't been any change. And so that is why I'm running, to bring about accountability, transparency, change in government, and we want to reform the city. We want to make it the best possible. We want to promote Laredo, bring more businesses, bring about more employment. And so I know that we can do it, but we have to, get the vote out, get the word out. And I know that I am the best candidate, although my opponent thinks that I'm inferior. I don't know where he got that from. I know that I'm the best candidate because of my education and experience. And I'm asking for your support, and I humbly ask for your vote this November so that we can make changes with the city, so that we will no longer be sick and tired of what's going on downtown, and that we can bring about democracy and change for the better to promote Laredo.
I have one more. Is there now on the council a block of council persons that vote as one? And how is this block hurting our city?
Yes, there is a block of 5, and you have seen that even in the news, how they always vote together. So that seems to be, to me, not following the Open Meetings Act, because it seems like they're already ready to vote one way. for one. And this is hurting the city because if it's just about opposition with the other group or proposals, it's not about the city. It becomes more about my ego winning over rather than putting the best interest of the city at hand in the decision making. So I think that we have to break that group. We have to look out for the city and what's in the best interest in the decisions that we make for our taxpayers and for their dollars as well.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vielma, in summary, would you like to add anything else to tell the people what else that you might have missed, that they might have missed, so that they will vote for you?
Well, I think one of the areas I didn't get to talk about was about public safety. And as a former prosecutor, that is one of my concerns. You know, being in the border, we hear about all these actions that are taking place, but I don't see that we have a plan of prevention or intervention to be ready for a lot of emergencies. What I want to do is also collaborate with the state, the county, and the federal government, being more proactive in that regard. And I know that my experience is going to allow me to do that because I've already done that. I've already worked with groups in law enforcement and bringing about progress and projects as I've done with from JP level courts all the way to federal court as well. And I know that there's a lot of projects that we want to do. We want to be more receptive to the businesses, and as a business owner, that is what I want to bring back to the city, to make the decisions where it's going to make more business sense, to try to save tax dollars, to try to invest our monies wisely. And so your vote for me will mean that I will be able to apply my experience in education to work for you. I have been a public servant for many years. I want to be given that opportunity, and I humbly ask for your support and your vote so that I may be able to serve you once more now as your city councilwoman.